We're here with the legend, Joe Satriani. Joe, thank you for spending some time with us here in Tucson. I know you're up in the San Francisco area right now, and
That's right.
we're both experiencing a chilly morning, right?
Yeah, it's we're having rain, lots of rain, which is great for us. But yeah, it's like what do they say? There's a saying in Scandinavia, there's no bad weather, only inappropriate clothing. So, you know.
True. I understood that as of this morning when I walked outside and it was 24 degrees. Whoa. And I'm dressed like I'm in Tucson, so a couple of months back, maybe 6 or 7 months ago, I had the pleasure of talking to Steve Vai.
Oh, great.
And we were promoting his show at the very same venue. And he kind of let a little tease out that there might be a reunion of the original G3. And so here we are, G3, the reunion tour. It's going to be on Tuesday, January 23rd at the Rialto Theater here in Tucson. You can get your tickets at klpx.com or the Rialto Theater box office or at their website as well. We'll have all the links below. But, the first tour, I think, was it in 96?
That's right. Yeah, 96.
So, what was your inspiration to get you, Steve, and Eric Johnson all together on a stage and do the G3 tour originally?
The original idea came from the fact that I was both super happy and appreciative that I had this great solo career and I was touring around the world and I had a great record contract and I was making records and I had artistic freedom. But my main complaint the day that I walked into the Bill Graham management office was that I could never be in the same city when my guitar playing friends were there. And I realized that years had gone by and I'd been completely isolated by my success. Every time I was in London, Steve was in LA, and I'd get to LA, and Steve was in Tokyo, and just it was always like that. And I thought, man, I'm either on stage, the only guitar player, or I'm in my hotel room or tour bus or an airplane, and then I'm back in the studio making a solo album. So I said, can we do something? Can we just, how about if we make our own festival? Like where guitar players have to get together every day, hang out, talk, have fun, and play. And I said, as an audience member, that's what I want to see. I would have gone every night if Hendrix and Beck and Clapton and Page had decided to go on tour together and do it a lot, and I thought, wouldn't that have been great, that Page got together with Alan Holdsworth and someone else, Johnny Winter, from not from their stylistic world, and try to play some great music for the fans. And so from that meeting, we sat there and we thought, okay, crazy idea, 20 guitar players, how we're going to sell that to promoters, what venue is going to be able to hold 20 guitar players. And we started to whittle it down to smaller numbers. And we realized that if we didn't offer each guitar player enough time to play their own music, that they wouldn't want to come and join the tour. And once we got it down to three, then we thought, wow, everyone gets to play somewhere between 45 minutes to an hour. They can play their hit singles, their fan favorites, their new songs. They can put it on their show, whatever it might be, and they feel like they've had enough time to do their thing and then do the jam at the end. So once we figured that, I said, I know who the other two guys have to be. And they were the guys that I thought were really changing guitar at the time. It just so happened my longtime friend, Steve Vai, was one of them. And Eric Johnson, my new friend, who we'd done a few tours together by then, was the one that I thought should be on this very first maiden voyage of G3. And so it took about a year to convince everybody that it was a good idea, especially the promoters who didn't want three headliners all at once, in one evening, and the managers too. You know, uh, the funny thing was that I found as we started calling other guitar players and their managers that they didn't want their artist to be standing next to someone who they thought was some sort of artistic threat or performance threat, and I had to basically say, look, the audience has already made up their mind who their favorite is. So don't even think about that. It's not a competition. They're just so happy that we're letting our guard down and we're going to hang out with each other and play other people's material, famous rock songs. We're not going to play each of our songs with each other. So it's not about that. And I don't think they really got it until we did that first show in 96 at the Concord Pavilion.
How many tours did you do with this original trio?
Oh, well, I guess we did two. We did that one in 96 and then the summer one in 97. Eric didn't want to go to Europe, so then Steve and I wound up going to Europe, and we had Adrian Legg open the show as an acoustic player. And unfortunately, he couldn't join us for the jam. And then after that, boy, I need to sort of Wikipedia myself to find
Well,
out.
you've had like Steve Lukather involved on some of these, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was looking Kenny Wayne, of course, Kenny Wayne
Yeah,
Shepherd.
Kenny Wayne was on the very first the run in the summertime, and we had Robert Fripp as well. And we had guests a lot. Like Neil Sean was our first guest for our first show, and Neil's always been a great friend, and he's just like a guitar player's guitar player. He loves playing guitar. Besides the fact that he's completely awesome on guitar.
I saw
Uh,
his son's band play a few months ago, and that kid, the genetics are there.
yeah, Miles is great. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, we've done, I don't know how many of these 16, 18 G3s. We've done a lot of G3s around the world. Uh, but this is the first time that Eric, Steve, and myself have gone out together, the three of us, since that original 96 run.
So what was the catalyst behind the G3 reunion?
It was really my son Zizi, who's a filmmaker, gave me a call one day and he said, you've got this sort of anniversary coming up of G3. And he goes, I was just thinking that that it coincided with uh, his fourth birthday. So he October 2nd, and he turns 4. A few days later, we take him out on his very first tour, which started his life hanging out with his parents on tour around the world. And so, boy, when you look at the photographs, I mean, there's this one picture that always comes to my mind, which is so funny. It's Zizi. He's 4 years old. He's holding a plastic pail and shovel. He's dressed like a little 4-year-old by the beach. I think we were at Jones Beach at the time, playing at the amphitheater there. And he's on stage with Robert Fripp. And there's Robert Fripp with his guitar and all of his gear. Standing next to him is this little kid. They're both smiling for the camera. But it really illustrates the fact that he joined us. His coming out on tour, learning about what his parents really did for a living and getting into that life of being a traveling musician coincided with the beginning of G3. And so we were all as a family trying something new and exciting. And he wanted to make a documentary about his journey as a kid growing up in a family like ours, and the fact that G3 continued, and that he wound up being close to guys like Steve Vai, and they've all known him his whole life. And so these connections are really strong and interesting. So we started talking about doing this film. To kind of fast forward now, he's been around the world. He's interviewed Robert Fripp and Brian May in London. He's been in LA where he lives, interviewing Christopher Gaston, Nuno Betancourt, and Steve Vai, and everybody in between. He's going to be doing Kirk Hammett later this month. I think he's interviewed maybe 50 guitar players, and he's going to be coming out on tour and actually playing on a song on this G3 tour. We're filming it, obviously. The Although it's not a concert film, it's really a documentary about ZZ and G3 coinciding together, and about what guitar means in general to all these guitar players of the last 2 generations or 3 of guitar playing. But we are making also a live album, an audio album, which it's funny. I didn't think people still did that, but Ear Music really wants us to do a full G3 audio live album. So we're doing that as well. So it's really interesting how all this is coming together. And wow, rehearsals start next week. It's all about to blow up.
Well, and Tucson is actually your the kickoff of the tour from what I'm
Yeah.
looking from what I see on the website. I didn't realize that. So I've been a big fan of yours for years. I've seen Eric Johnson in concert a few times, Steve Vai multitudes. I even drove him around Phoenix when he was in Whitesnake years and years ago. And so I've been a big fan, but I've never, for some reason or another, I always missed the G3 tour. Something I had to work, something came up with the family. So I'm going to this show. I'm looking forward to it. So the question I have in regards to this is for somebody like me who's never seen the G3 tour, and especially this is the reunion of the original lineup. And maybe there's somebody who's never been to a G3 tour, but
Yeah.
maybe has seen you guys. You know, I've seen you with Sammy, I've seen you the various incarnations, but what can they expect when they show up on January 23rd at the Rialto Theater?
Well, we decided to, honor the original setup from '96, where Steve was opening the show, and Eric comes on second, and then I come out third, and then we have the jam. So basically, each artist gets roughly about 50 minutes to play anything they want. It's their stage. And so Steve will kick off the show, and he'll be on stage for a little bit under an hour. He'll be followed by Eric, and Eric will do the Eric Johnson magic for about the same amount of time. I'll come out with my guys. We'll do our thing. And then after my last song, I'll invite Eric and Steve out, and then we'll proceed to jam for as long as the house will let us. Usually we get 30 minutes. Sometimes the house, if the venue allows us to play longer, we'll play a little bit longer. And then if there are guests in town, like I mentioned, Neil Sean jumping on the very first one. I think he jumped on maybe 4 or 5 times. I mean, around the U.S. every time he's been in the same city, and so that's a common thing as well. In at the G3 shows is there's G3 plus whoever is in town who wants to come and join in the fun.
So when you do your jam session, like you said earlier, you're not doing each other's songs at that point. You're just doing a bunch of covers and songs that you all love.
Yeah, I that was my original idea that I pitched to everybody. I thought it was more inviting, number one, to forget about us and our career and what we were trying to sell at that moment, a single, a video, whatever it might be. And because I thought, those are the things that kind of separate artists, the competition in the marketplace. So I said, why don't we just pick songs we grew up with that everybody knows, that aren't too complicated, but can be filled up with the craziest guitar playing. And and if it's Kenny Wayne Shepherd's in town, or it's Neil Sean, or uh, Steve Miller, whoever, and they say, "Oh, I'd love to play." You don't want to hit them with, "Love, we got this Frank Zappa song. Do you know how to play it?"
Yeah.
Of course, no one knows how to play it except like Mike Keneally. So but if you say, no, we're going to do I'm Going Down or Red House or something that everybody knows, then they're like, sure, I don't care. Whatever key, I'll use whatever guitar you got. And that's the spirit of what I was trying to capture, is guitar players joining together, relaxing, having fun. That's something that the audience really wants, but they don't get to see. What they generally see is us being very professional, putting on a show.
Hmm.
They don't really get to see us just hanging out with each other, freely exchanging licks, trying to, in the most friendly way, outdo each other, and then share those licks, because that's kind of like what we do. We learn from each other every night.
You know, you
So
kind of answered one of the questions I was going to ask you, because at first I was wondering with the amount of talent on the stage, but it seems like all three of you are going to have your own bands with you.
yes,
Okay,
everybody
so it
has
won't be
their own
one
band.
band shared with the.
Yes, yeah, that's also a big difference. Yeah, there had been other like festivals where they try to share the band, and like all those things you've seen on TV, the award shows. I have one band and the artists come out. It doesn't, you don't really get to capture the essence of the artist that way. That's a whole different kind of a show. And that was, again, part of my original thinking, that everyone should have their own band. We have to figure out a way where all of us can travel together with our own group, put on our own show, and somehow, not lose a fortune while we're doing it. So, but that it did work out. Three was turned out to be the magic number.
Also, too, I would feel that you have to be comfortable with the people you're on stage with at that moment too, especially within your stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it can be done. Steve's Generation X was very successful, and he basically had one band and a kind of a tag team kind of way of doing it, and that has its own charm. So I'm not totally against it. I just thought that G3 could establish its own identity as a very unique kind of a guitar festival, a one night festival. If everyone was allowed to come in and just with their own band and feel very comfortable with their own things, and because it is art after all, and you want the artist to feel like they they're are given the proper space and time to show their audience their thing, that they've been working on their whole life.
But it's interesting. I was looking at what you're up to, and I was on your website on the G3, just checking, doing some research, and yeah, it looks like you're also going to be doing a Steve Vai Satriani after this is over in February. You two are going on tour,
Yes.
and is it a similar type of thing there on that tour?
That's a little different because there's only two of us, so we all get to play longer. Our sets will be longer. Steve and I, right this moment, are working on two songs, two original pieces of music
Oh wow.
that we're finishing now. Of course, because we're all working, doing different things, we've had to do this sort of remotely. My producer Eric Cotia down in LA is like the center guy who's receiving all the files. Um, I wrote these songs. I did a bunch of guitar parts, like sent them to Steve, and I said, Steve, do whatever you want, take them apart, rebuild them, whatever. Send all the parts to Eric, and he'll figure it out while we're off doing our other gigs. And then, so I think we haven't really settled on how we're going to do it, but we're definitely going to play together on that tour. And then we're also going to present our own shows as separate artists. So we'll figure it out. It'll be kind of like a G2 thing.
And then after that, you're going to be doing the Best of All Worlds tour. I think the
Yes,
last
yeah,
time I saw you was with Chickenfoot. So this is like a combination of Sammy's Circle and Chickenfoot, the way it looks like with Jason and Michael and you
yeah.
and of course Sammy. That starts later on this year for the summer, if I understand that
That's
correctly.
right. Yeah, right in the second week of July. It's funny. Sammy called right before I started this meeting because we're working on a song as well, and he just flew into town to do something, and we were going over this song, and I made writing notes here about Sam wants a break here, and this is so yeah, what a crazy tour. I thought that the thing I was going to do with Alex and Dave was over. I just thought that's never going to happen. It was just so difficult, and I was kind of relieved because the work would have been so intense for me to try to do an entire show of Eddie Van Halen. That's just, I wanted to do it in my heart, but I knew that I don't really play like him that much. So it was going to require just months of studying. And anyway, fast forward, I thought it was kind of behind us. I thought Wolfgang already did it. It's done. Leave it to the family to do it. And then all of a sudden, Sam calls and he goes, I got this crazy idea. And he said, but don't worry, it's not going to be just, Eddie Van Halen. It's going to be a Sammy Hagar legacy tour, really. And so we are going to do Montrose, Sammy Hagar solo material. We are going to do Chickenfoot. We get to do two or three of my own songs, but there's good that big chunk of the show is Van Halen, both Hagar and David Lee Roth era. So that
Wow.
part's really fun because we get to do some other songs that we wouldn't normally have done. Because if I had gone out with Alex and Dave, we wouldn't do any Hagar period. And that really, you miss out on all that crazy writing that Eddie did when he was working with Sam. They just did songs. His guitar playing, his writing just went to some other level.
Mhm.
And it's different from the Roth era. So this is a broader approach to the Van Halen legacy, which is great. But I still have a lot of work ahead of me.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. Any chance of you doing G3 again when the Sammy Hagar when the Best of All Worlds is done, or what else do you have in your docket? I've been looking you. It seems like you record every 2 or 3 years. You put
Yeah,
out a new album. Last one was in 2022, if I
yeah,
remember correctly. It was The Elephants of Mars.
yeah.
Besides the thing you're working on with Steve, any chance of other new music?
Well, we've talked about continuing the writing process to see if we could come up with a full album. So that's something that I think just gonna keep going. I know that. I feel good about that. And then I know Sammy talked about once we finish this song, we might as well keep going to see if it would be something. I don't know if it's chicken foot or whatever you call it. And I think that's a great idea. I've always had that still inside me. A lot of those songs that I thought and types of songs that we never got to that I thought we'd be really great at, in the Chickenfoot band. Um, so, and then I do have ideas about another solo record, and I know that my label Ear Music would like all of it.
I'm
So
sure they
I
would.
just don't know how I'm going to do all of it.
When do you find the time to breathe?
Yeah, just keep breathing all the time. That's the key is just, it's important to make lists. I mean, you can't see my wall over here, but over here in the studio, there's a wall and it's filled with post-it notes and 3x5 cards and printouts of set lists and, you know, uh, everything from remembering what size picks to bring to what songs you have to learn how to play that you've never played before. Ideas about set lists and just, I just, I like to work.
Mhm.
And so I tend to think about the music and the art commissions that I have, and I just figure don't worry about it, just put it in order, and like today before doing the interview, I worked a little bit with Sam on the phone on the song. I got a little bit further with that. Maybe after the interview, after I go bring my guitars over to Gary to get tweaked for the tour, I'll come back and I'll sit down and that'll be the next thing on the list is start to work on those changes that Sammy was suggesting. And you just do one thing at a time.
Just step by step.
Yeah.
So one last question for you. You talk about covers. You talk about, you're going to be playing obviously Van Halen stuff with the Sammy
Yeah.
tour. You're going to be playing some covers during the G3 for the
Yeah.
jam session. Do you have a favorite guitar song? Like, what is your like the song that you just inspires Joe Satriani? What's that song that you just get up there, you can't wait to play that somebody else wrote, that's not yours, but
Oh,
you know what I mean? What's that song that you just went, yeah, that's the one for me.
wow. There's so many. And I'm a moody type of person. So that means that every night on tour, I go, no, this is the song I want.
Ah,
And I found like in 2019, we did two Experience Hendrix tours. Uh, it was really great. Kenny Aronoff on drums, Doug Pinnick playing bass and singing. And we got 30 minutes all by ourselves on stage as a trio every night to play. And it was really, I just, playing If Six Was Nine, that to me was, wow. Third Stone from the Sun, again, those, the songs, in a way, it's like the songs that we never heard Jimmy play live because they were too studio like, I guess, at the time. Now, of course, we have pedals to simulate the studio sounds that he didn't have. So maybe that's why he shied away from some of that stuff. But those were really great. But once the tour ended, I was like, okay, I've done that. Now I want to move on. And so every night's different. That's a terrible question to ask me. I
well, it's
can't
like
give a good answer.
that, yeah, well, you said it depends on your mood.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's actually, a great answer to it because, your mood changes daily, everybody's does,
yeah.
and you feel like this on one day and this on another. So yeah, I understand that. Well, Joe, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to seeing the G3 reunion tour with Steve Vai and Eric Johnson. It's going to be the kickoff here in Tucson on January 23rd. And the one thing I'm gathering about this isn't a typical in and out the door in 2 hours show, opening act, main act. It's three main acts, each playing
Yes.
about 50 minutes to an hour, and then a jam session at the end. So
Yeah.
yeah, you're going
Yeah.
to be
I
there
mean,
for a while. It's going to be a great show.
telling people to get there early because the beginning of the show is the show, all the way to the very end. There's going to be cameras and recording equipment. So if you want your face in the movie, you want the sound of your voice on the live album, you come and make some noise and jump up and down. So it's going to be a fun
Oh,
multimedia event, the whole tour.
so they'll be filming that night as well.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, perfect. Looking forward
Yeah,
to it.
yeah. He's going to be there with his camera every night, following us, and I'm gonna make him get on stage every night actually because he is not a professional musician, and so when we practice, at home just hanging out, he's great. He's just a natural player,
Mhm.
but he has no idea what it's like when you get on stage because everything always goes wrong when you're on stage. It's the
Yeah.
funniest thing, but nothing is like what you've planned. And that is probably 90% of what being a live performer is learning how to deal with the chaos
Oh,
that
yeah.
is always happening.
Yeah, because you gotta keep going, and then hopefully the audience doesn't notice.
Yeah, it's just a funny thing is just when you're at home, you're practicing in your mind, the band does exactly what you want them to do. And then when you go to play live, they don't. So I keep telling him, be prepared for chaos, and like I tell in the old days, I tell my students, learn how to play everything 5 different ways because you never know when you have to switch approaches because someone did something different and you don't want to be freaked out.
You
So
gotta you gotta have all the contingencies ready.
yeah, it's going to be fun. I really I have such a great feeling about this tour. That just getting back on stage with Steve and Eric is going to be just so heartwarming. It's just going to be great.
It's gonna be a fun show. Joe, thank you. I've met you a couple times in very quick meet and greets and stuff like that, but it's been a pleasure talking to you. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the concert, the kickoff of the G3 reunion tour here in Tucson on the 23rd. Thank you very, very much.
My pleasure. Thanks for talking to me today.